All right, noting that it is way past time for this meeting to start, it is 7:06. I will call this meeting of the Committee of the Whole to order. The first item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, next is roll call.
Alder Allen.
Present.
Mayor Radefrada is absent with excuse. Alder Gerhardt.
Here.
Alder Herbst.
Here.
Alder Jetzer.
Here.
Alder Maldonado.
Here.
Alder Strassman.
Here.
Alder Udell.
Here.
Alder Wheeler.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Great. Next item is the approval of minutes of the November 29th meeting.
I'll move approval.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next is public appearances for any items that are not on the agenda. And I only have one registration sheet, which is for something that's on the agenda. So since I don't see anybody for that, we're going to move on to agenda items. So at the council meeting 2 weeks ago, there was some significant discussion about gender-neutral locker rooms in the police, in the new police building. And to be honest with you, prior to that meeting, I had never even heard of a gender-neutral locker room. So I've made some contacts, done some digging around on it, and it turns out that this is kind of becoming the trend for new police facilities as they're being built around the country. We do have one person from the public to speak on this, Lisa Heitman. Sorry, I can't read. So please come up and tell us what's on your mind.
Good evening. I am Lisa Heitman, Fitchburg Patrol Officer and current president of the Fitchburg Professional Police Officer Association. Throughout the entire design process of the new police services facility, members of the association have given our input and feedback on what we wish and desire in this new, much-needed facility. FGM architects have completed a building program and schematic design based on the information gathered from us, the users of the police facility. A discussion regarding one large universal locker room will occur momentarily, as Alder Allen stated, and I urge you to truly consider the voices and input of our current employees. Hopefully, you will hear today the preliminary results of a department-wide survey, which the majority of police department employees have already responded to and did so very quickly. Also, a few members of the association have met with an alder, and members have also provided feedback to Chief Morales, who then shared that feedback with this council. We have a retention problem. Officers are leaving Fitchburg at an alarming rate, causing a multi-year-long staffing crisis. Please value our voices and listen to what we would like in this new facility. We appreciate the council on your forward-leaning perspectives and looking to the future and growth within the department. We encourage you to have that same forward mindset when considering the training scenario bay with live fire capability and to envision how that will benefit the city today and well into the future. Thank you.
Thank you. So just before we get too deep into this, I just want to say that I want to limit this discussion to the locker rooms. I don't want to have a broad-reaching discussion about everything in the police station that we don't like or we do like. I just want to talk about the locker rooms because this seems to be an issue that hasn't really come up in the public conversation, and so that will be for today. So in my search as I was looking around, I discovered that about in 2008, I think it was, Baraboo had built a new police facility, a new public safety facility. and their facility has gender-neutral locker rooms. So I asked the chief if he would be, the chief of Baraboo, Ron Simden, if he'd be willing to come and talk to us about their process to get to that and how it's been working out for them. So on the screen right now is a picture of what their locker room looks like. You can see the lockers in the middle, and then there's private facilities, 4 of them that are off on the side that have their own door with toilet, sink, and shower. That is a separate place where the actual changing would happen. So, Chief, thank you for coming. Thank you for appearing by Zoom tonight. Can you just talk briefly about how you got to this and what your experience has been so far in the decade, well, in the 8 or 10 years that you've had it?
Well, first of all, hello, everybody, and appreciate the opportunity to talk about our facility here. And I want to preface this, I guess, my statements by saying that what we have currently, what you're looking at there, works well for the city of Baraboo and its law enforcement officers. Whether it works anywhere else, I guess I'll let them comment on that. But thus far, and just so you're aware, our facility is only 5 years old. 2018 is when we built it, so 5 or 6 years old. So the idea of gender-neutral locker rooms had come up. And we did some research on our own in calling around and finding out just what they were, because in the traditional sense, it is vastly different than what I think we are used to in a locker room. All of us have been in locker rooms in the past, and it is a rather new and innovative idea. But as you can see here, we've got 45 lockers in that room. There's one bank that's missing on that diagram. But we have actually the room itself is surrounded by 4 restroom shower facilities and 1 changing room. So that's actually 5 rooms that are around it. Each and every room
Oh, wait.
Sure.
Oh, it's fixed now. We got your back. Go ahead.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I guess I'll continue off where a little bit here. We have 5 rooms that are adjacent, immediately attached to the locker room itself. That's where the traditional changing of any type of private attire would occur, in those, either the single changing room that does not have a restroom in it, or one of the 4 full restroom, full shower facilities that are kind of circling our room. As far as it goes in Baraboo, we have a staff of 24 male officers. We have 4 female sworn officers, and we have 3 female non-sworn department members. So a total of 24 males that occupy the locker room itself, and 7 females that occupy the locker room itself. And actually, they like the lockers. They like the spacious size of the lockers. And to date, we haven't had any issues with that.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions to ask Chief Simden? Gabriella?
Hi, Chief. Thanks so much for coming tonight. My one question is, when you first came up with the idea and when you presented it, was there an immediate backlash or misunderstanding from the officers about the design? Was there a negative reaction from the outset, or was this kind of something that people came to and felt pretty good about from the beginning?
Good question. There was interest, absolutely, by, I would say, all of the staff members, all of the officers, all of the administration, sworn and non-sworn. It was such a new idea back then, there was concern. And that concern, once we kind of talked about it, and because it's such a new idea, we discussed kind of operationally how it's going to work. The fear is, at least for the city of Baraboo and our officers, the fear was really in the thought of a traditional locker room. And once the officers, we shared the plans with them, and we showed them the layout where the 5 rooms are immediately adjacent, that's where any type of private change would occur. The only thing that really happens in the actual locker room is the donning of our ballistic vests, maybe hanging up of your winter jacket, your civilian jacket, changing of boots. Other than that, nothing really happens in there at all. It all happens in the associated rooms. But to answer your question, yes, there was great interest, which was, I think, alleviated through communicating exactly what this room is to those employees.
All right. Any other questions? I see we have several members of our police department. If you want to throw some questions up, I'm sure the chief would be interested in answering. No one's rushing forward. All right. Chief, thanks for attending our meeting tonight. You provide some good input, and good luck to you in Baraboo.
Thank you. Have a good night.
All right.
Need
So
anything else, just let me know.
I sure will. So then I also asked our fire chief, Joe Pulvermacher, if he would come to the meeting tonight because it turns out that both of our fire stations have gender-neutral locker rooms in them. And I've got both of the floor plans, but they're nearly identical, so I'm just going to leave that one up there. And Joe can talk about that.
So the idea behind the gender-neutral locker room is, first of all, there is no presumed privacy in the locker room area. One of the concerns that we had is actually representing our department fairly from a facility standpoint. I have no idea what our workforce is going to look like in 10 to 20 years, and to presume how many female firefighters I'm going to have versus male firefighters is difficult. And in growing up through the fire service, I grew up in fire stations that had no female facilities because it was a predominantly male occupation that then had to be redesigned and revamped to be able to accommodate our workforce. One of the things that was used in my previous fire department is the gender-neutral philosophy, and that allowed us to accommodate all of our firefighters regardless of the ratio. So if I had 4 female firefighters that were working that day, everybody would have the ability to shower after a fire. If I had a fraction of male versus female firefighters, we could accommodate anybody. The other thing that we needed to be able to address was the gender identification issues that we're seeing throughout the fire service, and to make sure that everybody has access to facilities. And this was probably the easiest way for us to address that. Is the locker rooms were not presumed to be private. They could grab their things. All of the bathroom pods, if you will, are set up the same way. Every one has a shower, a sink, and a toilet. And so regardless of who's working, they can go into that area and change into their clothing items. There is a slight difference between us and the police department. We also have dormitories. So one of the things that happens in the morning when they come in is they can either change in the bathroom pod or they can change in their dormitory. And that's dependent if there is anybody already in the dormitory. So if it's something that requires them to change, there is some area where they can assume a certain degree of privacy. So the idea is we didn't want to presume that either the male locker room or the female locker room was any larger or smaller. We wanted to make sure that regardless of who is working in our buildings had equal access to facilities. And we also just wanted to make sure that we didn't have to deal with it in the future with building modifications to address a variety of different firefighter ratios. So that's the thought behind it. I'm not going to for a minute, think that I'm fully aware of all of the variables that exist on the law enforcement side, but from a fire department perspective, it worked for us.
All right. Any questions for Joe? All right. Seeing none, thanks for coming.
No problem.
And I notice out there that we have a number of members of our police department, and I see there's a couple online also, so I don't know if you have anything that you want to say at this point in the meeting or anything you want to bring up to discuss. Looking to see if anything happens. All right. Well, Gabriella.
I just want to say one more thing. I have had some conversations, like private conversation with some of the police officers about this, because I've obviously spoken a lot about it in meetings. I just wanted to make the offer that if anyone in the Fitchburg Police Department wants to speak with me, not in a public forum, I would welcome that. So feel free to reach out. I really want to hear your perspective. I by no means have made a decision on this, even though I obviously have thoughts. So want to hear what everyone has to say. So please reach out if you want to talk with me more about this. Thanks.
All right. Any other comments?
Yeah,
Go ahead, Jim.
So what's the end game? I mean, we're going to decide whether it's gender
Well,
neutral or...
I don't think we're going to make that decision tonight.
No, I know that, but what's the long
Well,
game
at some
here?
point that decision will have to be made. So I really just wanted to get some discussion about this because it seems like an important issue. And if as a city we're building a facility that's going to last 50 years and we're trying to speak to the future, then this is a pivotal piece of that puzzle. So I see we have someone from our police department.
So I just wanted to jump in and provide an update on where things kind of stand. Officer Heitman mentioned a survey communication to poll feedback for the department, and we can discuss some preliminary information from that. But we are looking at, with FGM, looking at options, preparing for decisions that may be made. And Andrew Mayo from FGM is online here. The important consideration that I tried to bring up on January 10th was the logistical issues here. The chief from Baraboo mentioned their department size, and I've spoken with DeForest, more local, comparable in the sense of their design. They have 22 sworn officers, 4 females of those 22, and they have 3 changing areas. They are completely landlocked with their locker room space, so when they grow, they can't add changing spaces or locker rooms. But if they are lockers, or if they were to add lockers, they would conceivably be adding more staff. They would not be able to add a changing area. So the concern, again, is this building is, I think, really premised around the concept of improving efficiencies, and the locker room area could be an area in the sense of workflow or flow into that area at the beginning of a shift where you're going to lose efficiency if we don't plan appropriately for space. And so in speaking with the architect, adding a sufficient number of changing rooms, again being forward thinking, is going to consume more space within the police department. So as the design is currently laid out, that would encroach into the community multipurpose room. So it could consume several thousand additional square feet to accommodate the number of changing rooms that may be necessary to accommodate, whether it's a single use room where there's a bathroom, shower and changing area, or if it's just a bathroom and changing area, whatever that configuration may be. So if it's of interest, we can kind of briefly discuss a couple options. I would put the caveat out there that these have not been reviewed by staff, our entire department. And I do really want to emphasize, I think people understand the need and the concerns related to inclusivity, but I think the biggest inclusivity that we're focusing on right now are the folks that are protecting and serving our community every day, and that have to come and use our facility right now and have endured the hardships related to the current facility. And we really need to think about, from our perspective, what serves our people who are then serving the community the best. So if Andrew is online and can share those designs or preliminary designs within the technical constraints that we're dealing with tonight, I just want to remind everyone that no one's had a chance for our staff to see these. So Andrew, I don't know if you can.
Sure. So thanks for the intro, Ned. I just want to touch on a couple of the previous comments. So I was actually on the design team at a prior employer for the Baraboo Police Department. So I'm keenly familiar with that locker room, and I think a lot of good points were made, but also take into account the difference in sheer size between Fitchburg Police and Baraboo Police. And I think that's been reiterated numerous times. So with that, I will go ahead and share what we've been looking at here. Can everybody see that now?
Looks good.
We're good? Okay. So what you're looking at right now is what it would take to go from what we currently have designed to kind of an open universal locker room with a few different options for showering, using facilities, changing, etc. There are two different areas that are kind of behind closed doors that are more communal in use, while they do have their own private stalls in, like you'd see in a more traditional restroom. There's also individual showers with changing benches. Those are more privately behind curtains. And then along the right side here, you see a series of 5 rooms that are those individual toilet, shower, changing rooms. So you get a toilet, a sink, a shower, and a bench in a private setting. So it would really be kind of the communal locker room where everybody comes in, everybody's welcome, and then you get to choose whichever space you want to use to do what you need to do outside of just accessing your locker. So that's one concept that we've been looking at, and it's probably a little difficult to see on screen, but the dashed line here is the current allocation of space in the existing floor plan for locker room areas. So this dashed line kind of bisecting this toilet here, that's the wall as it's currently designed in between the locker rooms and the community room. So this design would encroach some on that room. The overall difference in square footage between the 3 locker rooms we currently have designed and this one larger space, this one is about 120 square feet larger than what we have designed currently. Let's see if I can get to. So the other one takes into consideration true universal gender neutrality. So this is private rooms for everything. So we can accommodate private toilet as well as private shower and changing rooms. With this one, you can see again that dashed line there. There would be significant incursion into the community room, and this one's about 1,000 square feet larger than what we currently have designed for locker room facilities. Again, like Ned said, these are just concepts that haven't been really vetted through discussion with staff, but just to show you, there are potential design options out there. It's just a matter of what direction the police department wants to go and what direction the city council wants to go. So any questions on either of those layouts from anyone?
Gabriella?
Can you just help me understand? Because it looks like there's something like 12 individual changing spaces or maybe even more. Can you point out which ones are a changing space? It just seems like a lot of these to me.
Right. And again, that's the difference between a department of 20-ish sworn officers versus a department where we're designing for, I believe it's 83 sworn plus 15 civilian. So
how many
department?
How many individual changing spaces are there? I literally can you point them out to me? So
down at the bottom here, everything with that little gray bench behind a door, that's a shower and changing room. So you have ADA accessible plus 2, 4, 6, 7 smaller individual on the bottom of the plan, and then 6 individual and 1 larger ADA on the top of the plan for a total of 13.
13. So how many officers in a department as big as you're potentially talking about, how many officers would be on shift at any given time? There's going to be more than 15 people on shift at one time?
Potentially. I mean, the potential exists, and they also have to think of special situations, emergencies, operations, things like that happening. Yeah, you could easily have that number of people coming in at one time, on top of the fact you have people coming in to use the workout facilities, people training, any number of things that could be occurring where you have easily 10. I mean, so if you figure just from scale, you figure Baraboo has 22 and they have 4 spaces. So now we're talking 4 times as many. So if you were to kind of build that out, I mean, the numbers match up with what we're talking about as far as the number of changing spaces that would be necessary. So again, focusing on efficiencies here, we're talking about getting people through is.
Okay, just to play that out though, so with 15 potential officers on, so you feel it's a priority for every single person to be able to change simultaneously?
I think it's a significant priority in the sense that if you have officers coming in a few minutes before shift and our officers aren't compensated for changing, there are some departments where you're compensated for donning and doffing your uniform. If they're coming in, we're not requiring them to come in at a certain time. I'm not going to ask officers to come in to stagger their arrival to allow them to change in a private changing area. It's an inefficiency. And so I guess I'd defer to Andrew is there a formula and what he's seen at other facilities? And I would defer to him on that.
I mean, it's really unique to each department and how you're operating, how your shift change happens. The other consideration that would be at shift change, it's not necessarily just those on shift, it's those from the prior shift coming off shift. And, if they need a shower before they go home or whatever, it's not just one shift. You're getting that crossover between the 2 shifts.
And the policy question comes up, and this is what I asked of DeForest, is essentially any changing of uniform. So putting a shirt on requires that person to go into a changing area. So it's not necessarily you're taking a shower, you're going through everything that you would need. Any changing or modification essentially of any clothing that you're wearing, short of putting an exterior vest on, would require you to go into a private changing area because everyone's out in that open area. So that's where you're going to get an increase in size and that efficiency or having that space.
Shannon.
This question's for Andrew. Now, in each one of these individual changing, is there a toilet in there, or is it just for changing and shower?
The way we design these is you have your changing and shower room, and then separately you can see there's a bank of toilets on either side. The thought there is we didn't want to occupy a toilet if you're not necessarily using the toilet. So you can still use the facilities even if every single changing room is occupied.
Okay.
Randy.
Andrew, The toilet area itself, is that an individual room or is it partition?
It's individual rooms. So that's another trend that's happening. I don't know if anyone's been in any public spaces where you have the more communal bank of sinks for hand washing, but then across the aisle from that is these individual rooms for the toilets, which gives you the full privacy.
And this version that you have on the screen, what's the increase in the square footage again? Did you say about 1,000?
This is about 1,000 square feet more than what we currently have designed for the 3 locker rooms we have in the facility.
And it's that 1,000 square feet is coming from where? The community room?
Most of it would be carved out of the community room.
What does that leave the community room with? Do you know offhand? Just out of curiosity.
I believe it would take your classroom seating from 100 down to about 60.
Jim. Oh, I'm sorry. Bill first and then Jim.
Chief Simden from Baraboo, he said that they've got 31 people who are using the locker room. I don't know if we can look at that diagram again and just like compare square footage per occupant of the locker room. How do we compare here? It seems like this is it's a somewhat different design with the separate toilet facilities from changing and showering rooms. And given that the design also has, where are the nearest restroom facilities outside of the locker room? How far down the hall do we have to go?
With the redesign, you would go all the way past the elevator toward the break area, that bank of restrooms there.
Okay. I don't know, this layout seems like a larger fraction of this layout is dedicated to the toilets and changing rooms than in the other designs that we've seen.
Right, and that's what happens when you have a much larger force with a lot more civilian staff as compared to some of the smaller communities that have been referenced here today.
Andrew, how many lockers does this design have? 90?
This has 96, which includes 4 ADA lockers.
So it's 3 times the size, I believe, if I was counting correctly, as to what Baraboo had.
That tracks.
How does that compare to the schematic design that we have right now?
Right now, we have 68 in the men's, 25 in the women's, and 3 in the universal. So
it's a bit more. Jim.
It's actually equal.
This is the same.
Yeah.
It's the same number.
Well, it's 84
Same number.
versus 96. He said 96 in this design.
68 plus 25 plus 3, 96 and 96.
Oh, okay. Jim.
Andrew, what is the cost of this design?
To be determined. That's something that if we go down this route, we'd have to work with Pepper to come up with the added cost. Really the biggest change would be the number of partitions, which would require additional HVAC ducting. There's a lot that goes into having a single room as opposed to your more traditional toilet partitions in a larger locker room space, because there are ventilation requirements as well as lighting requirements that are prescribed by code.
Bill.
Yeah, I just pulled up the existing design. I'm not entirely sure how to read this in terms of the number of showers. But the total area, it looks like the total area is quite small in the current design. How many actual showers are there?
In the current design, if I remember correctly, there are 7. I could be off plus or minus 1 though.
It looks like there's 6. It looks like there's 3 in the men's locker room, 2 in the women's, and then the 1 universal one.
Okay.
So why in this design, in the gender neutral design, do we need twice as many?
Well,
because
actually,
these are your change rooms as well.
Actually, that's actually a question that I was going to get to, because when at our meeting at our last council meeting, the chief was talking about how you might have 10 or 12 people changing on a shift, and that could mean 24 people using these facilities at the same time. And when I was looking at this, I mean, I don't care how you mash it out. Three showers in the men's and 2 in the women's, and the one other one just seems like grossly I mean, even if they're not changing rooms, it still doesn't seem like anywhere near enough facilities for dealing with 24 people who might be trying to use these facilities all at once. So I was.
But they're not all guaranteed to be showering.
What's that?
They're not all guaranteed to be showering. I mean, I can use an example of a recent project we completed in Wauwatosa Police. That one has 4 showers in the men's, 2 in the women's, and they do not have a universal. So total of 6.
Okay, but I would presume that most people of any sex would prefer to have a private changing area.
Yeah, so when you're showering, the way we're designing these facilities now is there are basically 2 compartments. So if you think about this 3x3 square of the shower, if you double that, that becomes your changing area, where we've got rope hooks on the wall and things, so that you bring your whatever you're changing into to the shower area with you and get dressed in there. But to Ned's earlier, if you're doing something as simple as changing out of a sweaty shirt or something, you're not going to necessarily go into one of the private changing rooms to do that. You might elect to, and that's your prerogative. We're trying to be accommodating to all of that, but in a more traditional locker room sense, that's not necessarily happening.
Okay, fair enough. I noticed this design also has 8 total toilets, and the current design only has 6. And that's fine. I don't mind adding, because again, our hope is that this building is going to be a 50-year building or longer. So hopefully we'll be able to accommodate almost anything that we end up having for staffing. Shannon?
So I'm just going to do a little bit of a scenario here. When, most of us ladies use a locker room where we shower, and you work with these same people, there is a place where one person can go into the shower, they can come out of the shower, the next person can go in the shower, but they can still get dressed. If you have everybody using just a room just to get dressed, it makes it a little bit more complicated. You can put more people that feel comfortable with each other, more females or men or males, they feel more comfortable jumping out of the shower and getting dressed. Whereas what happens if you got a bunch of people waiting to get into one of those, and you've got people that take a shower? They now are going to have to wait until the person is completely dressed, instead of being able to, they're not going to want to take their stuff once they get their towel on and go into a private room to get dressed. Just wanted to.
Yeah, and I understand that. I understand your concern. But I think part of what we're trying to address here I think, and Gabriella brought it up at the last meeting, is that we're not simply dealing with binary people. We now have now have people who are not binary, and trying to squeeze them into a binary
Well,
box
they
isn't
had a
really fair.
non-binary room as well. That was
Right, for one person.
So it wasn't for just one person.
Yeah,
There was a couple of stalls in there. There was how many? Andrew, can you tell us how many stalls were in there for the non-binary?
Current design, we have 1 toilet, 1 sink, 1 shower, 6 temporary lockers, 3 lockers.
Oh, so it's one.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we can increase that number, of showers in there. But my thing is I don't understand why we are redesigning everything is it going to be half the staff going to be non-binary?
We don't know what the future holds.
But
Will half the staff be non-binary? Probably not. But there will probably be more than one in the future.
So you're going to make a bunch of people uncomfortable for a few people.
Well,
I'm sorry, I'm the one that has to say it, but I mean, really.
Part of the idea behind this discussion is to try to relieve some of the discomfort, and maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. I mean, a gender-neutral locker room is working in many different places. And as I was looking around, there were at least a dozen police stations that I ran across that were built fairly recently that are of that configuration. So somehow it's working other places. Gabriella?
I think part of the point is that people just don't have to say which gender they are when they go into a bathroom. I think that's part of it. It's like no one has to declare that by walking into a bathroom. And I think a lot of people that choose either a men's or women's bathroom might still want a private changing area. So if we do keep a gender-separated design, I don't know if we can include a changing area where people can have a private space to change. I think that would be a good addition to that if we do end up going with that. Going back to this current design, though, I generally like this, but I just think that there's a little bit of frustration on my part because I don't think this is a one-to-one with the current design. I don't think it's a gender-neutral version of the current design. You added 7 showers compared to what exists right now, which is obviously a huge cost increase. And also, you don't need, for changing spaces, you don't need an individual room. It can just be a curtain, you get it, like a changing room. You could have a full curtain that comes across, and that wouldn't require different ventilation. Because some of it, obviously the shower space needs to be completely separate, but a changing space I don't think necessarily needs to be an entirely separate room. That's all to say that I just don't think this is a one-to-one. This isn't a gender-neutral version of exactly what we see in the original facility. It's more than that.
I think that's one of the challenges here is that it's not, I don't think you can create a one-to-one design of what we currently have. I understand where you're going with the number of showers, but I think focusing on the need that this isn't the YMCA or a gym, understanding the equipment and the different layers of gear and everything that officers wear. Number one, there's an inefficiency in having to go back and forth to change, to simply put a shirt on and then putting boots on and doing other things. It's not just I'm changing into gym clothes and going out to changing. Now, I would also point out that this is adjacent to the workout facility. So we would have people throughout the day coming in, presumably before or after their shift to work out. So you will have people just changing into gym gear and then showering before or after shift, people coming in for court and a variety of other things that are occurring. So I think that's one of the points, is that this can't necessarily be a one-to-one. And Andrew's, I don't know if I'm speaking out of line here, but it's hard to create an exact version of what we have right now.
To Gabriella's point, we wouldn't necessarily have to make every changing room a shower and changing room. We could cut the showers out of half of these and still get more. I think you're looking for that one-to-one plumbing fixture ratio. But even in doing so, you would cut out basically this 3-foot swath here, which would save you about 168 square feet of locker room space rather. But you'd still be encroaching into the community room by about 14 feet with this layout.
Can you just show that other design, Andrew?
Sure.
While we're waiting on that, or I guess it's there now, but I don't think I would support having changing rooms that just had a curtain on them. I think if we're going to do this, we need to do it correctly, and provide facilities that looks like a professional facility. We're not building a Target changing room. we're building a police station. So I don't think that's the right answer. But I do like the idea of having, and that the Baraboo design had that also, where they just had a changing room that didn't have showers in it. So I think having some of that type of facility probably helps. It mainly only helps on the cost side. I mean, I don't know how many showers we need. If we had a department with 100 people, I don't know how many showers we would need. But I'm pretty sure that 15 is a lot. So I don't know. Bill?
Yeah, we don't have to know. We can look. There are police facilities in the country that have 100 officers and have gender-neutral locker rooms, right? I mean, can't we find existing examples and use that as a template?
So we've been designing gender-neutral universal facilities for about 12 years now in our public safety facilities. I can't really speak anecdotally, but on any specific larger sized police department that we've done, but it tends to be that as you get toward your larger departments, like you are in Fitchburg, you tend to gravitate to more the traditional locker room design with encompassing a universal locker room somewhere adjacent to those two traditional male and female locker rooms.
All right. Oh, Lisa's coming back.
Yes, and perhaps this is a question for the city administrator. Will the preliminary results of the survey be discussed at all today, or in what format is that going to be provided to the council?
I don't have that information today. My understanding is the survey closes in early February.
Yep.
What I did get from the Human Resources Director was that there had been a significant response so far from a number of police department employees, I think well into the 40s early on. And her anecdotal feedback was that it was overwhelmingly in favor of the design that had been presented earlier, i.e. separate men's, women's locker rooms with a universal changing area or universal locker rooms. So once the survey closes, we'll be happy to share the results of that with the council.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
And can I just add?
Sure, please do.
Real quick. So in that survey, and as Officer Heitman had pointed out, there has been a good deal of information that's been shared and discussed. FGM has presented some of these options, and I think it's been given very careful consideration by all members of our department, both sworn and non-sworn personnel, people that have to wear a uniform and a vest and all sorts of gear and spend several minutes just changing without having to shower. And so people that do this on a daily basis have been spending a good deal of time digesting this information. There's quite a bit of information that's out there on the topic, both pros and cons. And as I point out to other alders, the nice part about this police department, I think, or the potential future of this police department is that it gives it allows us to create a police department. It's not a cookie cutter design. It's not an off the shelf design. It fits the culture of what we have now. And to your point, what the future may look like is unknown. The trend that we're talking about that may happen may become more prevalent, may be reversed 20, 30 years from now. We don't know. But I think the focus is on, and should rightly be on the individuals that are serving in this facility now and have given a great deal of input on the other components of this facility, including the evidence storage, the investigative section, the people that are using this based on their current experience, and also keeping in mind that our men and women, everyone that serves in our department, they serve this community, and we have a diverse community, and so they understand the dynamics of both the department and the community. And so I just encourage people to give a great deal of consideration to the feedback that has been obtained by our staff.
Yeah, I do appreciate that. I really do. But I also, once I discovered what this was all about and started looking more into it, and in my social groups, there's a fair number of non-binary people, and I talked with a few of them, which none of them are in law enforcement, so. But they did suggest that this would be the way to look toward the future. And the thing is, if we're just meeting our needs right now, if we're trying to accommodate everybody who's in the department right now, then there's no forward progress as to what the department may become or what it may become naturally. And the thing that I struggle with is, if we build this as is in the current schematic design, you can't change this later. Once you pour concrete, once you put walls up, this is not something that can be altered at a later date. And so whatever we do now is going to be a permanent decision that's going to live in that building for the next 50 years. And by then, pretty much everybody who's working in the department right now isn't going to be there anymore. It's going to be different people. So the question is, how do we address all of these things at the same time? And we may not be able to, but it is a decision we're going to have to make. Is there any other discussion on this? Yeah, Bill?
I just wanted to reiterate something that was said earlier. The idea of trying to be inclusive by providing segregated facilities just seems wrong. And if we're relegating the non-binary people to their own separate space, it just feels like we'd be on the wrong side of history.
All right. Anything else? Shannon.
I disagree. And that's all I'm going to say. I think a lot of us disagree with that. Because guess what? We could be on the wrong side of history with building more of those. And, I'm going to tell you, there's been a lot of big things that everybody got behind that were colossal mistakes. And we should learn from those. Sometimes baby steps work. Not constantly... just trying to stay calm here. I understand you want to be inclusive, but you cannot be inclusive at somebody else's expense. And you really need to think about that.
Jim?
Ned mentioned policies. They're waiting that you get some policies. I'm actually looking at the UW-Madison policy, and it actually says what restrooms should non-binary people use. And basically it says they should use the restrooms in which they feel safest and most comfortable. This may include gender-inclusive restrooms or men's and women's multi-stall restrooms. So, there's policies out there, and I think if the UW-Madison can come up with a policy like this, got to be other policies out there. Maybe we should just take a look at those actually to see what's out there.
All right. Anything else?
I forgot I had one more piece for you if someone else up there is.
Oh,
Sorry.
I'm hearing voices, sorry.
I neglected to mention there is some feedback that has been obtained by individuals who have identified other than male or female that have worked in law enforcement, including our police department in the past, and other police departments in the area. And as Andrew, I think, had mentioned too, the trend in larger police departments where I think there would be perhaps a higher percentage in other parts of the country. The trend has not been to have a universal locker room. And so I think the preference has been, as Alder Wheeler had pointed out here, individuals choose the locker room that they feel most comfortable in and not necessarily choosing a separate locker room, the universal space that we have currently designed. And I think that universal space that we have currently designed could be chosen by any member of the department to use as well, whether on a permanent basis or a temporary basis. And so I think, we've been seeking feedback, and you can seek feedback of personal associates. But I think considering the opinions of individuals in law enforcement is equally important related to their opinion as a non-binary member of a department.
Bill, we're going to have to wrap this up pretty soon. So.
Well, just a question. So, there is a growing trend toward gender-neutral locker rooms in police facilities. Do you have any thoughts as to why it's going to work okay elsewhere but not here?
Well, I guess first I'd really want to know what the growing trend is. I think can find when we've talked about anecdotally and things like that, I don't know that Andrew would necessarily indicate that it's a growing trend around departments our size. I think, as it's been explained to me in other departments that I'm familiar with, it was more born out of the cost efficiency related to it and the potential for adjusting, not necessarily having enough space. The fire chief had mentioned adequate locker room space for female staff members and not having to adjust for that. I don't think that if you search the internet, you don't find a wealth of information about it. You find stories about it because they pop up, but it's not, I don't think, and I don't know if Andrew can speak to the percentage of projects that he's worked on that's a consideration, but I don't think it's common everywhere. So I just want to, before we start saying that it's a very large trend, I would just offer that in response. And I don't know if Andrew has any feedback on that.
I don't necessarily have numbers for you, Ned. There are large departments in this country that have included gender-neutral facilities in their new buildings. I'd say probably the largest that we're designing right now is out in Washington, D.C., but that's not necessarily a police facility. That's more of a public safety training facility. So a little different dynamic there.
All right. Well, I think we've gotten to the end of this discussion. It's going to be continued, I'm sure. But I want to thank the members of our police department who did come tonight and to share the information you had. And I think, as Gabriella mentioned, I think all of us are available if you want to talk with us offline and, provide more detailed information that might not be appropriate for a public meeting. So please feel free to do that. Joe, thanks for coming also. And with that, we will move on to our second agenda item, which is the Fitchburg Historical Society that wants to make a presentation to us. So, Alan, I don't know how to pronounce your last name. Tariba. Great. Yeah.
I prepared for 45 minutes, so it's a question, do you want to stay here until about 9 o'clock or are we scheduled?
Just launch into it.
Okay. As soon as we get things. Okay. I'm Alan Tariba, president of the Fitchburg Historical Society, and with me is Eileen Killer, secretary of the FHS. We appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. We have decided the best way to describe what the FHS is about and what value it has to the community is to go through a portion of our website. Unlike many historical societies, we have few historical objects. For this reason, our resources, presence, and methods of sharing information are primarily virtual. Before we give you a tour of our website, we want to tell you a little about what makes our society unique and why we think it adds value to Fitchburg's current and prospective citizens and businesses.
So of our 12-member current board, only 3 of us would be considered Fitchburg natives, and I'm one of those. I've got family that go back to 1860, and we've been off and on through the past however many decades that is. But that would be using the definition that their family lived in Fitchburg when that member was born. The rest of us have lived or worked in Fitchburg for many years, in some cases predating the city's incorporation. All of us share an interest in local history and place a high value on gathering Fitchburg's old history and capturing its new history as it's made. Fitchburg is one of the state's fastest growing municipalities. It can be hard moving to a new location and forming a new sense of place and community. People driving through the undeveloped parts of Fitchburg may simply see farm fields, marshes, country roads, and old houses. And in newer areas, they may simply see extensions of Madison or Verona. The resources we have available on our website can help people form an understanding of the city as it is now and help educate them about the businesses and people that are part of their new communities. We hope that our presentation will provide a better understanding of this society and its value. Alan's going to give the presentation. I'm going to kind of monitor the website, but let me know if I make you car sick in the process. I'll try not to zoom or do anything too quickly.
The easiest way to get to our website is to search for fitchburghistory.org. This will bring up our website as an option, but may also bring up the FHS website for Fitchburg, Massachusetts. Fitchburg, Wisconsin was actually named after Fitchburg, Massachusetts. Feel free to interrupt and ask questions at any time. First, I'll walk you through our website so you can see how it's organized, how to navigate it, and the types of media we have available. As you can see, we have 9 main menu items at the top and several links on the right side, including links to our FHS Facebook website and our YouTube website. The website's main categories were chosen so that we can house both old history and current information. In addition to the written content within the website are downloadable PDF files, digital photos, and JPEG format, and videos that can be viewed on our YouTube website. The whole homepage, as you can see, contains a notice that what has been added to our website. This is followed by a short article of current interest. In this case, when we got our award from the mayor, and a link to past articles. At the bottom is a photo of one of our display cases with a short description. Let's start looking at the articles within each menu. For a historical society, the FHS is quite new, having been organized in 1986 with the urging of Mayor Jeannie Zeeling and incorporated in 1987 as a nonprofit organization. Our motto is history is yesterday, today, and tomorrow. This encourages us not only to obtain information about the past and present, but to look to the future and the implications of the northern part of Fitchburg becoming urbanized and the encroachment of subdivisions on the farmlands in central and southern Fitchburg. Due to limited storage space in the City Hall building, only documents and photographs were collected with a few exceptions. When the Fitchburg Library was built in 2010, the FHS had the use of the Fitchburg room on the second floor, along with 2 display cases, a small office, and a few shelves, the storage room in the basement. The FHS obtained funding for the large mural in the village of Fitchburg. However, we have relied on small yearly membership fees of $10 for individuals, $12 for family, $50 for businesses, and a few donations to pay for speakers at our spring and fall meetings, and for our yearly WordPress subscription. The FHS has 12 board members with 4 members elected each year for 3-year terms at our April meeting. Officers are elected each year in April by the board members. A brief bio is available for each board member. And this is just one example. In 2016, due to a lack of sufficient funds to staff our office, we wrote and obtained a grant to digitize our collection and develop a database and website so that everyone with an internet connection could view our documents online. We were fortunate to have the volunteer services of Elizabeth Leith, Senior Academic Curator in the Department of Anthropology at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, to help us with writing grant and developing our database. She also had several students that needed volunteer hours. So they were very helpful in scanning the thousands of documents and photos in our collection. Our FHS website went online on December 26, 2016, with 5 web pages. We currently have 290 web pages in 3 large databases: an obituary database, an FHS photo database, and our FHS newsletter database. Since we have obtained updates to our databases and several new articles each year, we instituted an FHS website alert system. When new material is added to our website, we send an email to FHS members and other people interested in our website, telling them about the new material and include a link to the material. We typically see a doubling in the number of daily views when these notices are sent, indicating that approach has been very successful. Has any one of you tried that? I guess not. Something for you that's on your list that you have to try that. We will start our journey with our newest website article that takes us back 12,000 years. Examining Fitchburg's Native American history was inspired by the recent discovery of a 3,000-year-old canoe in Lake Mendota. Most of the information in this article describing the progression from hunter-gatherers to more permanent structures and planted crops was summarized from articles on the website of the Mississippi Valley Archaeological Center at the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse with the help of Elizabeth Leith. Luther and Elizabeth Leith were also very helpful in obtaining information on specific sites in what is now Fitchburg during the 4 major time periods beginning 12,000 years ago. Unfortunately, the location of these sites cannot be disclosed publicly due to treasure hunters searching for souvenirs. The earliest sites indicate that Native Americans occupied what would become Fitchburg as at least for short periods of time as the glaciers receded northward at the end of the Ice Age. Going to more recent times, Bill Kinney, a sixth-generation Fitchburg resident, describes the beginnings of Fitchburg. The land which would become Fitchburg was first surveyed in 1833 by a government official and found to be good for farming. In 1846, a three-township area was created and called the town of Rome. A year later, a township was created from Rome and called Greenfield. Due to postal confusion with the Greenfield in Milwaukee County, the township name was changed to Fitchburg, and that's how we got our name Fitchburg. This article goes on to describe the development of Fitchburg from a rural community to the mixed cultures of the present-day city of Fitchburg. Another article under history is the town chairs and mayors. This page lists all the chairs and mayors, including the three Greenfield town chairs when the township was known as Greenfield. Most have a photograph, a short bio, and cemetery information. It should be noted that many served 1 to 2 year terms, but after another year or two would be reelected. Philip Berry was elected 6 non-consecutive times, and Hiram Roman served 5 non-consecutive times. Do you think that was a good idea? Seems like they were sort of pressed into serving as mayor. Under the school system, Fitchburg schools, this is a chart of 11 known districts in the, better wait until.
Yeah, it's not liking my movement here. 1 second here. Okay. Sorry about that. I'm having a little trouble here. Okay.
Okay. And go on down to the bottom. There is a chart of 11 known districts in Fitchburg in 1931. So far, we have not been able to identify District 11, which was likely shared with either Oregon or Verona for a short period of time. It should be noted that District 3 and the second District 5 in the upper right corner had their schools buildings in Madison. There's a short description of each school with a photo of each school. As you can see, schools were truly one room with an outhouse. At least some of the schools did not have water in the beginning, and an older student was tasked with bringing buckets to a neighbor's house to get water for the day. Clicking on Read More brings up a longer description of maps, photos, and a school sign designed to designating the location of the school on a map. The daily program chart shows the time and activities of each grade. It is amazing that one teacher could manage all 8 grades teaching different subjects to different students. The upper grades had fewer students as some had to work on the farm or help their mothers manage younger siblings. The teachers provided the school board with updates and noted that what supplies and repairs were needed. It should be noted that married female teachers were not allowed to teach. So they usually had a turnover of those female teachers. Once the one-room school system was stopped, students were bused to schools in Madison, Verona, and Oregon. This solution was logical as these 3 adjacent communities had a much higher population density and had established high schools. Unfortunately, as relationships are frequently centered around schools, these families lost some of the identity of Fitchburg. Stoner Prairie Elementary and Savannah Oaks Middle Schools were built in the northwest section of Fitchburg, but managed by the Verona School District. Several of the old buildings were turned into homes, and you could see that through the years, the one-room schools turned into 2 or even 3-room schools. We currently have a display about the historic one-room schools in the library's Fitchburg room. If you have not had an opportunity to view it, I encourage you to stop in. It can add depth to the origins of Fitchburg's current 3 school systems. Also under the history menu is the sub-menu Fitchburg post offices. This article describes the locations of old post offices. Yes, Fitchburg had several post offices and provide a glimpse of several population centers that could not make it as an individual town. The post office started in 1842, which at a stagecoach stop and inn that was half-mile south of the current Highway M and Pishatry Road. The post office was called the Fitchburg Post Office. When the stagecoach road was less traveled, the post office was moved a half-mile north to Oak Hall Business District, and after 1861 was called Oak Hall Post Office. There was no mail delivery, so people had to visit the post office to see if there were any letters. At that time, letters were free to mail, but cost 25 cents to receive them. This was a great amount of money for many people, and sometimes it took a long time for them to get the letter. In the 1890s, the residents were asked to change the post office name because it was being confused with Oak Hill Post Office in Wisconsin. After submitting several names, the post office selected Floyd as which was the first name of Floyd Gurney, a local farmer, for the name of the post office. Today, Fitchburg, a city of over 30,000 people and the size of almost an entire township, does not have a post office, even though it has 5 zip codes. And that's sort of something that I don't feel is right. We should have a post office. Okay.
Here we go.
Excuse me, I just have to find my place again. Okay. Moving on to landmarks menu, the submenu historic sites contains a list and information on 4 levels of interest, including buildings on the National Register of Historic Places, sites on the Fitchburg Landmarks Preservation List, sites of local historic interest, and 353 structures on the Wisconsin Architectural and History Inventory. As an example, the Vroman family farmstead webpage has the history of the owners, expansion of the property, construction of buildings, and the current status of the property. The map at the bottom shows the location of 34 sites, although a couple of them have been demolished. In 1976, there was a national survey to identify oak trees that were alive in 1776, when the Declaration of Independence was signed. Of interest to me is a project started a few years ago to find those trees and search for additional trees that fit the criterions. 23 trees were found that were on the official list, with another 3 trees that appeared to be old enough. Photographs and exact locations were provided. And this was one area where I had to trot through fields to find the trees. But that's something I kind of like to do, get out and 2 books have been identified that contain biographical sketches of 55 individuals associated with Fitchburg in the second half of the 1800s. Andrew Kinney was one of the early settlers of Fitchburg and founded a large community of Irish settlers beginning in 1844. The article describes his birth in Ireland, his journey to Canada, and eventually to what would become Fitchburg. His descendant, Bill Kinney, still lives on Irish Lane. While Fitchburg is a relatively small community, it has provided soldiers for many wars. To recognize this sacrifice, the Gorman Wayside Veterans Memorial Park was established in 1975. Have all of you seen that one? Good. Yeah. Going back to the Civil War, records show that 97 Fitchburg men fought in the Civil War. This is an extremely high percentage of men, considering the 1860 and 1870 censuses showed the total population of Fitchburg was about 1,200 people. A spreadsheet gives the detailed descriptions of each of the men. At the bottom of the Civil War page, there is a map showing the home location of each Fitchburg soldier. It was amazing that out of the 97 Fitchburg soldiers, I think there were only a couple deaths while actually fighting, whereas there were several that died of diseases and a couple more that died drowning when they were trying to cross a river. Our obituary information on Fitchburg residents is quite extensive, and it currently contains over 1,400 obituaries. To keep the database up to date, Diane Reynolds, a board member, actively searches for obituaries that include a Fitchburg reference, such as place of birth or for someone with a current or historical connection to Fitchburg. This information can be viewed in 2 ways. Due to the large number of the obituaries, the last name of the deceased individuals are divided into 6 alphabetical groups. Most names will have clickable links on obituary and cemetery information. And Eileen's going to show we have the actual obituary. And if she could click on this cemetery, you get more information. Takes a while to load.
Okay.
So that gives the official when they were born, when they died, and places. Okay. The FHS obituary database is the second way to obtain information. It is designed to quickly gather information about a deceased individual and is thus good for genealogists, like I am an avid genealogist. The large spreadsheet arranged alphabetically gives the names, dates, and places of birth and death, sources and dates of obituary, and it frequently lists the cemetery where buried. Of special importance is that the spreadsheet lists the names of all the people mentioned in the obituary. With this information, one can go to the obituary webpage and select the obituary to determine the relationship of people. For many years, Fitchburg farmers planted wheat, but nutrients in the soil were depleted, and a cinch bug infection made wheat growing unprofitable. The farmers then turned to dairy farming, and like other Wisconsin farmers, Fitchburg became a dairy farm community. And There we have information on a lot of the farms. History is not only about long ago times. As our motto says, history is yesterday, today, and tomorrow. The Verona Road construction project is an important part of Fitchburg's history. As the growth in population south of Madison increased, it became apparent that the highway system in Fitchburg, containing low speed limits and multiple traffic lights, could not handle the morning and evening rush hours going to and from Madison. Plans started in 2013 to develop a high-speed, predominantly 6-lane freeway going from the south edge of Madison to Verona. Construction began in 2016 and finished in 2020. The planning, development, and construction of this freeway are detailed, and we worked with a group that was actually building the freeways. In addition to the obituaries database, there are databases of our FHS newsletters and our photo database. The newsletter database contains approximately 100 newsletters which can be viewed individually or as one large PDF profile. The advantage of the large PDF file is that it is searchable, so topics of or people of interest can be quickly found. The photograph database contains information about the photos and a thumbnail of the image. Clicking on the thumbnail image brings up a large image. Because we do not have the resources to make these photos available to view in person, the database allows anyone with access to the internet a way to view them. This is an unusual feature for a society of our size.
We're going to try this one again, Alan.
Okay.
It's not loading. So we'll try it again.
Okay. It could take just a little while. It's a very big database.
Looks like it's still syncing up there.
Or we could go on.
Or you can just
Take
trust
a word.
him. Yep. We'll just trust Alan on that one.
It's real nice.
Just takes a while.
Yeah. So, we have information on both historic businesses and current businesses. We currently have 54 current businesses. Expanding the information about current business is one of our priorities, depending on the availability of volunteer sources. We would welcome submissions by businesses that would like to be included. And this is where we could actually ask for your help. If you know businesses, they almost always have their history or what they do. And if you could sort of encourage them to write up a short summary of their businesses, it would be great to put that into our database. And that way, if people are looking for a certain type of business, they might find it that way.
And you're going to trust us on that map too, because that one's taken a while to load as well. So we'll just go back.
Okay. I would like to end the presentation by describing our video collection. These video resources are an exceptional feature of our society, and we are appreciative of the assistance that Fact TV provides. Fact TV has been gracious in filming our spring and fall programs that are open to the public. We currently have 19 presentations, which are on our FHS YouTube website. During COVID, when the restrictions were in place and we were unable to meet in person, we offered the programs via Zoom with the assistance of Fact TV's staff. While we missed the in-person contact, being able to continue our programs helped us continue to provide a service to the community. We also have interviews once a month with people associated with Fitchburg or a topic of current interest. These interviews, which now number 76, are also recorded by Fact TV. Our video presentations webpage has a link to each video on our FHS YouTube website. And just give you one example for a few seconds. So these are some of the interviews that we've had lately with the head of the library. This concludes our presentation, and we welcome any additional questions and comments. Thank you.
Well, that wasn't an hour. No. You owe us a half an hour.
I talked fast. If you didn't have any questions.
Any questions? Gabrielle?
I just want to say that the website is extraordinary. I'm really impressed with all the work that was done. I just had no idea you had so many resources and so much detail, so kudos.
Most people think that.
Yeah, it's
if you
incredible.
go to most historical society websites, which, to be fair, they have an old building and they have physical objects, but they don't have all this other information that you right at your fingertips, and you don't have to go anywhere. So it's a learning process. I had to develop these. We didn't have a lot of money, so I had to learn how to develop a website, and got some help here and there. So it's we're very proud of that website.
Well, this website is great. I have most of the books that you reference on there, but having it in this format, I haven't been to the Fitchburg Historical Society website in a long time, so
there's a lot of new information.
I just mentioned that I think the fact interviews are probably of really great value to people because it's not just topics of historical interest, but there's been a real focus on, for example, during COVID, many of the interviews focused on what were the impacts on businesses, how did funeral homes work, how did city government work, how did elections function. So in the sense of historical society, I think we do a really exceptional job in capturing current history and making that available. So in terms of people new to Fitchburg, it really can be a valuable resource to sort of see how the city's grown, what are some of the current issues, and provide a really good kind of Cliff Notes background on many of those items that remain very topical.
all right. Any other questions for? Well, thank you so much for coming and presenting this to us. This was very informative, and I'm sure council members will spend all of their spare time looking over your website.
Yeah, we'll have a test in a month to see.
Excellent. We love tests.
I don't see any cat videos on your YouTube channel.
Excuse me?
I don't see any cat videos on your YouTube channel.
Nope.
There you go, Cats of Fitchburg, Alan, work on it.
Yeah.
It could be a community involvement activity. Yeah.
And the interview of all these people was set up by Catherine Snyder, a long-term resident of Fitchburg, and with Fact TV. Fact TV has just been a godsend to us to be able to really broaden out what we are able to give to the community. So thank you very much.
I have one question before you go.
Yeah.
In Fitchburg itself, unless I'm missing it, but I've often wondered, barns are brought up and families and so forth, which is great and wonderful, but why is there no churches in the Fitchburg area from 100 years ago? Or are there? There seems to be a large predominant Irish Catholic community, but yet there's no established church. Am I missing that, or?
Yeah, there was a church, was that on M?
There was a Catholic church near Oak Hill.
Yep.
That then, I don't recall
moved,
what happened, but the cemetery then was moved to the cemetery in Oregon.
Yeah, they moved. They moved that congregation down to Oregon.
Yeah, I mean, just a lot of communities, church was kind of the center focal point. That's why we don't see much of that.
I think I'll just kind of speak from my knowledge from my extended family is that people tended to go to the church that was in the community that they identified with. So, like, my family went to Oregon. Many of the families on Irish Lane went to churches in Madison because it was where your affiliation was. But that's a good question. I think it would be worthwhile for us to, if we can't find any content, we could at least include it because it is a topic that people often look for.
I just keep more curious than anything else. Thank you.
All right.
Very good.
Any other questions for our Historical Society people? Great. Well, thank you so much for coming and presenting all of this. And I hope to see more stuff. All right. So with that, we will move on to our next item, which is the update on our referendum. And I just lost the city administrator, so he's done with this meeting. Well, we talked last week, so I know mostly what you're going to say, but I could probably regurgitate it half-heartedly. Oh, gosh.
All good there, Scott, from a visual? Excellent. Hello again, everyone. How are we all doing this evening? We have a presentation tonight to provide to Council with an update on where the referendum planning has been in the last couple of months. I think the last time we did a presentation was back in November at the Committee of the Whole. Deputy City Administrator Adam Sayre is with me this evening again. And we also have Mia from Miller Communications. They are obviously the communications consultant that we are working with on referendum-related matters, and she will provide an update to Council as far as what Miller has been working on in the last several months as well, and what the next steps may be from their perspective. So I'll breeze through this presentation relatively quickly. Some of it is going to be familiar. And we'll hold questions till the end, if you don't mind, so we can, again, keep the pace moving. Again, we'll look at the goals of this meeting to talk about potentially identifying an amount or range if you want to make further enhancements to what you've already talked about back in November. If there are items that you would like to be included, if you want to confirm where we are currently at with the general themes of what's being included in the referendum, or if you would like to make some modifications to that. And then, of course, we'll look to update the Council on the timeline and survey that will be sent out to the community in the coming weeks. Again, for background, in November, we had at the Committee of the Whole a presentation. We discussed, looks like Scott's removed me from the meeting. So if you'd like me to leave, Scott, just tell me.
He's not in charge of this meeting.
So we discussed at that meeting options of the referendum, wheel tax, utility. That actually took place back in June, but we rehashed a bit of that information back in November. And then, of course, all of the meetings are on Fact TV for anybody who would like to take a look at those and learn more about all the conversations that have been happening at the Council level since basically June of last year. General feedback we took from the meeting in November is the Council was supportive of adding staff, providing additional transit, options, and then funding operations for the new police services facility. We heard varying dollar amounts of what a referendum ask might look like from the council. I think generally they range from $25 a month on the average residential residence, all the way up to $40 a month. So again, here's the general summary of what I just said. So potential referendum items look like this. We had a resolution in December that talked about the COPS grant that was awarded to the police department for 5 police officers. This council passed that resolution that basically indicated any referendum question that would move forward would include 5 police officers in an effort to capture that grant funding. Also looking at transit, we have 2 options that are currently being considered for inclusion in the referendum at this point. Enhancement of the east-west transit line, which generally would improve service both in frequency throughout the day as well as the days of the week from northwest Fitchburg through central Fitchburg and City Hall area all the way up into northeast Fitchburg. Also, the other option is looking at a bus rapid transit expansion. The operating costs associated with that, and that expansion would be from McKee Road to Lacey and Fish Hatchery or Lacey and Research Park. Also looking at the operating costs associated with the new police services facility. The costs currently look at including staffing of 1 full-time building maintenance custodian position, utilities, maintenance, insurance, and then ongoing capital costs associated with building systems replacement. If we have learned one thing with building new facilities over the last 10 years, 12 years, when you talk about even the library or the fire stations, things break sooner than we anticipate, as evidenced by the fact that we're spending over $500,000 on a new chiller and a 12-year-old library coming up here. From a staffing perspective, just as a reminder, Baker Tilly did an organizational and staffing study last year. They've identified the following listed positions in that study as being recommended from their assessment and meeting with all of the departments. We also asked each department to offer their recommendations for additional staffing. The police department offered the following recommendations in addition to what Baker Tilly had already identified. And I will add that Baker Tilly assessed both of the police and fire department recommendations as part of their staffing study. You can see the positions that are listed here. I won't read all of them. Fire department, looking at an increase in the minimum rate for paid on-call staff. We did make an adjustment in this year's budget that the council approved, moving the minimum hourly rate from $9 an hour to $12 an hour. And of course, this would potentially take that from $12 an hour to $15 an hour. And then you can see the other positions that are listed here from the fire department. EMS has indicated 7 additional paramedics will be needed in the next few years. That would be to add a 4th ambulance, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And then non-public safety positions, these are all the positions that we talked with our department heads about and requested that they take a look at their operational needs over the next 3 to 5 years and submit all of those needs through the operating budget process that we just completed at the end of 2023. So you can see the list of additional positions there that were not included in either the Baker Tilly study or other public safety recommendations. The outstanding positions still remaining in the Baker Tilly study, which are 9, would cost approximately $1.4 million annually to fund. The police recommended staffing requests would include approximately $2.1 million annually to fund. Fire, just under $1 million annually to fund. EMS, the city share, just under $500,000 annually to fund. And then the other 12 positions that were identified by department heads at just under $1.2 million annually for a total staffing request and recommendation of $6.2 million. Potential referendum amounts on the middle to the right hand of this particular spreadsheet, you can see the $25, $30, and $35 and $40 options that the council wanted this to take a look at. As our internal work group took a look at the options, we also felt that it may be appropriate in the event that an alder wanted to see $15 and $20 a month options, what might be included as a potential example in each of those as well. So you can see, again, that all of these examples, for simplicity's sake, use the monthly impact on a average residential home. So example 15 is $15 a month on the average residential home, assessed at $381,900. Example 15, and I want to stress, these are examples. Obviously, we're going to be doing a community survey that will hopefully shed additional light and information as the council and staff continue to determine what would be in a potential referendum. But we felt that all of the examples that you're going to see best capture the desires of the council that were stated in November to include staffing, transit, and the operating costs associated with the police facility. So in example 15, and of course you will see in all of the examples the 5 police officers that were identified through the COPS grant resolution back in December. 5 police officers, 6 firefighters, an enhancement to east-west transit, and police department facility operating costs. You can see in the table or the chart on the right-hand side of the slide, $15 a month equates to approximately $2.2 million in additional levy capacity that would be approved by voters through the referendum. And you can see the cost of those 4 items that would go into this particular example, as well as the breakdown associated with this. And I do want to be clear that the transit number that is sitting there is currently a placeholder. That is still fluid. We are still continuing to work with Metro to identify exactly a more refined estimate number based upon some additional requests that we had to ensure that we're making the most of that east-west transit enhancement.
Do we think that number is anywhere close?
Reasonably, but I'd hate to commit to it without knowing what Metro is going to say based upon the requests that we had for further enhancement there.
Okay.
It's more than the first
Yes.
estimate.
Yes.
So but I don't know if it's enough. So we'll see. We'll keep the council updated as we get refined numbers from them. Example, $20 per month. Again, you'll see the 5 police officers, 6 firefighters, east-west transit, PD facility operating costs, and then 4 positions that were listed in the Baker-Tilly study: communication director, community services director, HR talent specialist, and a finance assistant, and then an increase in the paid-on-call hourly rate from $12 an hour to $15 an hour. $20 a month would equate to just under $2.9 million in additional levy capacity. And again, you can see in the chart on the right-hand side how that would break out. $25 a month, $3.6 million in additional levy capacity. I won't continue to repeat each of the upper positions that we've mentioned already, but I'll add the ones that are being included in these last 4 examples. 2 police lieutenants, an HR generalist, budget analyst, and a nutrition site coordinator. The 2 lieutenants, the HR generalist, and the budget analysis are all Baker-Tilly positions that were identified there. And then the nutrition site coordinator right now is, that's a 0.6 position. So you can see how we put together this example that would utilize $3.6 million.
That's the position we funded last night for 2024?
I believe it is, yes. $30, $4.3 million. The additional items that could be funded in this example include a battalion chief in the fire department, expansion of the BRT from McKee Road to Lacey and Fish Hatchery, or near there, IT administration, custodian, and a street maintenance worker. $35, $5 million in additional levy capacity. That would add a police department sergeant, a property and evidence room specialist, a detective, and 2 police officers. And then the final example, which is $40, which is just under $5.8 million in levy capacity, would add another would add a assistant city attorney, a receptionist, a custodian, activity assistant, case manager, parks maintenance worker, and an additional IT administration position.
Is that activity assistant in parks or in the senior center?
Senior center.
Okay.
Looking at the timeline, we've been working with Mueller since October on assessing our options as it relates to survey and further process into the referendum here. Miller will be talking about a survey that will be forthcoming to our community that's anticipated to be hitting mailboxes on or about February 26th. Miller will be here at the Committee of the Whole meeting on March 20th to talk about the initial survey results. And then, of course, we anticipate all of the April 24th Committee of the Whole meeting being dedicated to an assessment of where the council is at with a referendum, and in ideal scenario has refined or will be refining exactly what the ask is going to be, and then ultimately we'll be targeting May 14th for a council vote if there is a desire to go to a referendum and have that vote. A fallback date would be the May 28th council meeting, but we would prefer, obviously, from a timing perspective, to have that vote in May 14th. Our question has to be submitted to Dane County no later than June 5th. And again, if we push to May 28th, we're pushing our timeline a little more than we'd prefer. If the council elects to move to referendum, May to August would be an educational period where Miller Communications will be assisting the city in educating the community on the referendum. And then, of course, the referendum vote would be August 13th. So this would be a good opportunity for anybody to talk about any refinement in the dollar amounts that you may want to see, or if you're comfortable where we're currently sitting. If you want to include or exclude any other items that could be requested in a referendum, or if you're comfortable with where things are at. And then, of course, the next steps will be a survey to residents, which Miller will talk about during their presentation. Any questions or things you want to talk about with staff right now?
So I think at the last meeting we had the discussion that there could possibly be like $8.5 million, which included a bunch of other stuff. What was that other stuff that's been excluded from the list we have now?
That had a cost of living adjustment for staff. I think we had examples up from 2% or 2.5% to 5% in there. Do you recall what else might have been in that example at all, Adam?
There are other positions in there as well too. I can kind of dig them up here if you want, but I mean, part of the intent of putting examples together, quite honestly, was one of the comments was it's hard to talk about an amount without truly understanding kind of what you might be getting out of this as well too. Some of those positions, I'm looking here real quick, and it's a big Excel file. Positions included additional, I think, dispatch in the police department, additional police officers that were not included in these, dispatch again, EMS, any of the EMS positions have not been included, and then also some additional positions that were requested by staff, including a permit technician in building inspection, a mechanic in public works, and I'm probably missing one or two, but that's in a nutshell what they are.
One of those lists that you just had, though, included a mechanic, right?
It did, yeah, but we're trying to work off of things on the fly here with a spreadsheet that listed every position, and I know that the council was shared that list back in fall as far as how many positions were requested, and it also included position descriptions or justification for those.
All right. Questions? I get the feeling that you're probably looking for a direction from us tonight, or?
I don't think it's critical tonight. I mean, it was helpful in November to kind of narrow down the range. Tonight, I don't think we're necessarily needing that, but if there was strong sentiment from any of the alders here to make any further refinements or suggestions, we certainly wanted to provide that opportunity. But it doesn't seem as though there is any strong feelings from anybody to make any notable changes at this point, and we're perfectly fine with that.
Well, I think, go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I don't know if we've looked into this yet, but how does Fitchburg's budget per citizen compare with other cities? I think, if we're on the low side, that maybe makes the referendum easier to swallow for residents.
That'd be something we need to look up. I mean, that data is available, probably might be a couple budget years old at this point in time, but the state does provide that information. So we can certainly look it up, what spending per capita is.
Not a lot of activity here.
No other hands. Mia, we'll turn it over to you.
Great. Okay. Well, it is nice to be here with you all. I'm just going to try and share my screen. I've got a little bit of a presentation to talk us through. There it is. Okay. Can you see this all right?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. As Chad mentioned, I'm Mia with Miller Communications. I haven't had the pleasure of being with you until tonight. You may remember my colleagues James and Maddie were with you in late September for a conversation relative to sort of the strategy that we laid out that we are now following to help with public education efforts as you and your staff and your community as a whole kind of go down this path of figuring out, what are the service needs, what are the funding needs, and how do we want to address some of those if we want to do so. I'm going to just take a couple of minutes to kind of talk through, a little bit of background on Miller, maybe 30 seconds, and then get into sort of the context that we find ourselves in statewide before we jump into a little bit more of a discussion about the work that we've been doing with your team and how public education will look in the weeks and months ahead. So just, again, a little bit of background on Miller. As you may recall, we are a Milwaukee-based full-service communications firm. I am just one of about 35. I think that number is a little bit different. We just had someone start last week, so maybe a little more than that. Folks who have all different kinds of backgrounds and experiences, everyone from graphic designers to digital advertising specialists. So really, you see me here, but I've got a whole team of folks behind me who are helping to do some of the more specialty tactics that we can use to make sure that everyone in the community is being engaged and being educated about the topics that we're going to run through tonight. So with that, a little bit more kind of background again on context. As you know, you are not the only ones that are facing funding challenges across the state. We're seeing municipalities having all kinds of different funding issues. These have been well documented, including by the Policy Forum. And we know pretty intimately that you're faced with this reality that there's not a lot of options relative to solving some of these funding challenges that you face with. So we are seeing, of course, a real spike in the number of referenda that are happening across the state of Wisconsin. This is a couple of years old at this point. This data is looks like our last figure here is from 2022, but just a real spike in the number of communities who are seeking referenda to increase their funding, their levies, and be able to address the service demands that their growing communities are experiencing. So that kind of brings us to today and to where we are with the approach that we're following. So just as a high level reminder, we are at phase one. We're just nearing the end of phase one of a 3-phase education process. And so again, goal here is to make sure that we are providing really broad opportunities for engagement, education, dialogue throughout the process, that no one is surprised if and when they see a referendum on their ballot, that they understand why that is there, what the impacts of that referendum are on themselves, their wallets, the services that they have come to expect or rely on from their community. So what does that mean? What is an options assessment? I guess I'm getting ahead of myself. Again, this is going to be a theme that I repeat throughout this conversation, but our objectives as a team here are, again, just to educate. One of the things that I'm going to be glad to talk about a little bit later on is what is that line, frankly, legally, where we have to kind of fall on the education side, state law, and I'm sure you've heard this from your city attorney, from your clerks, that we can't kind of use any sort of public resources to advocate. We can't tell people how to vote, but we can let them know sort of what's going on, what the needs are, what the situation is, and again, what the impacts are. So what is an options assessment? Really, the process that we're going through right now will culminate with a report. Right now, it's about 22 pages long. We're working to refine it and finalize it in the next couple of days here, and then you'll see that come through your inboxes or be dropped on in your mailboxes. The goal of that report is to just take a step back and look at where are we as a community in terms of growth, in terms of service needs, and then in terms of kind of each of the positions and needs that you heard just a few minutes ago, and that you've been talking to department heads about over the last many months. Goal is not just to say here are the positions that are being requested, but to dive into why, and if we add these positions, what does that mean for services? How does staffing, impact the quality of services or the delivery of services in some cases? And so just to really provide an in-depth report that folks who are interested can go and read and have access to sort of all of the background and homework that you all have been doing as a community to figure out what is the best path forward. As you heard referenced, that report isn't the only deliverable, isn't the only piece of public education. Our goal is to make sure that anywhere someone in the community gets their information, they are finding out about this, that they have a chance to review it, to ask questions, and to be engaged in the process. And so certainly, as mentioned, you will see that report. Our goal would be to publish it with a little bit of context to the city's website, to make sure that we are sharing it with media so that they can share it out with the community. Typically, that looks like a news release and then access to that report as well. And then shared, with links to that webpage via social media. The other sort of component as well is making sure that, you all as elected officials and even staff too, have access to some answers to questions that might come up about the process that we're going through. What does this mean? And so, you'll also be provided with what we call FAQs, some of the questions that we see commonly come up as we're going through a process like this. So you all are comfortable answering questions from folks that look to you all for guidance. Any questions on options assessment thus far? Okay, so then I think the next piece we really want to talk through is community survey. Obviously, what you just heard was a number of examples of here are the kinds of things we could fund if that was deemed to be the priority or the path forward. One of the one of the key parts of this process of education is that dialogue, is that feedback that we're going to receive from members of the community to say, hey, here's the situation. Here are a list of, service areas of departments. Help us understand from your perspective, neighbors, what you would want us to prioritize, what services are most important to you and your family. And then kind of further down in the survey, they would be presented with some of those examples that you saw discussed just a few minutes ago to say, would this be the kind of thing that you would be, able to, interested in supporting or not? And kind of going through and just kind of gauging where folks are at relative to their, interest, ability, desire to potentially see a tax levy increase. Again, as part of this, it's not just a survey that we mail out to every household, but there is certainly an entire communications push that is done to make sure that folks are checking their mailboxes, that folks know what they're receiving in the mail and why it's coming to them. So that would look like, again, you all having access to that and having access to questions and answers that you can provide if someone asks you a question about the survey. Again, putting that to the website as some just instructions or information, again, about what is going on. And then same thing here, news release, looking at what are the dates that the survey is open, what are we hoping to get out of it, and then of course on social. As Chad mentioned, we would look to the March 20th committee of the whole meeting to present some initial findings from that survey. Goal would be to have that survey open from maybe third week of February, sort of end of February through, I believe we're looking at March 11th, I think is the end date. We've got a little wiggle room there depending on when it does go out. But goal would be to have at a minimum, the results from those surveys that are taken online, so you all have access to some really quick turnaround on what's the pulse of the community. What we find is that about 90% of folks who take the survey take it online, so that gives you a really good snapshot of where are people at. It takes a couple of additional business days for those mail-in ballots, or not ballots, excuse me, surveys to be processed and for those to be input into the results. Of course, we would share those final results with you as well. But just to kind of set expectations, it's likely that March 20th date, we're going to have most, but not all of the survey results available. And then, of course, you are able to kind of take it from there. Determine based on your expertise and community input what the right path forward is. If that's determined to be referendum, we would then look to do some further, more specific education around what's going to be on the ballot, why is it on the ballot, what does it mean, that these are the questions that are being posed to folks, and then again, what is the impact? As you've kind of heard thematically, goal would be to make sure that we are using all of the tools at our disposal to educate the community, about the referendum, even when it's placed on the ballot. And so that looks like a number of different things. I'm going to run through kind of quickly here, but certainly key messages so that we are being consistent and accurate in all of the ways that we're communicating, a fact sheet so that there is one easy to read, well-designed kind of infographic style document that explains what's going on and what's going to be seen on the ballot. Again, FAQs, there are going to be probably a number of questions that folks have that a lot of people are going to have. It's not every day that someone sees a referendum on their ballot. And so that's something that we would, again, want to be publishing online, give to you all so you have access to. And what else? Additional outreach approaches. So direct mail is something that we find to be really useful relative to public education. It's something that, particularly as we're able to put QR codes on those mailers, those postcards that go out, we can see that a lot of people are reading those, are looking to find more information, are doing that homework to educate themselves before an election. And so that's a really key piece of outreach. Additionally, we love to encourage communities to hold information sessions, opportunities like this one, where city officials, other leaders can present out on what's going on, what is the situation at hand, what is the impact, and again, provide an opportunity for some additional dialogue for questions and answers. We know that information sessions the city hosts might not be the only places, the only meetings where engaged members of your community go to find out information, that there might be Rotaries, chambers of commerce, local Lions clubs, things like that, that have, regular meetings where it might make sense to present at as well. And then certainly there is a whole slew of, online outreach approaches and some certainly traditional media as well. So again, that web page, that landing page or website where we referenced the options assessment living, information about the survey living, we would flesh it out a little bit more and have really all of our materials live there. So there is one place that folks can go to find out anything that they might need to know about what's going to be on the ballot. Same theme here with social media, making sure that that content is consistently posted about the referendum, so that folks are seeing it, that they have an opportunity to click through to that website, get their questions answered. And then because we know not every resident of Fitchburg maybe follows the city on Facebook or on social channels, we also recommend and would look to pursue some paid social media. So when I say paid social media, I mean a post, a video, a brief video explainer that talks about the referendum, that links to that webpage, and that is geographically distributed to any social media user in the city of Fitchburg boundaries, so that we know that there are those additional digital touch points where they're able to access this information. Again, similar theme here, news release and opportunities for interviews with traditional media outlets. Again, to just be sure that for the folks who aren't on social media, who maybe aren't able to attend a meeting, that they're maybe reading about it in their local news. Okay, I promised that I was going to rehash this over and over again. Again, goal and theme here is that we're informing and engaging. We're not able to do advocacy. So I am just going to kind of talk through some do's and don'ts here. Again, this is some legal stuff. If we've got really specific questions, I do recommend that we kind of talk those through with city attorney, just to make sure we're on the right side of the law. But generally speaking, the line is education, not advocacy. Meaning we can tell folks all day long about what's, on the ballot, what the impacts of it are. What we can't do is tell people how to vote. And that goes for myself, that goes for, all of you all as members of sort of the city of Fitchburg. There is a little bit more specifics here relative to some examples of activities that you could do and things that you really couldn't do. Again, these fall under the category of telling people to vote yes or no, typically on the prohibited side. Again, factual information is a yes. Distributing materials that say how to vote is a no. There are some additional examples here. And then I know that you just kind of heard a run through of what that timeline looks like, but I'm going to kind of rehash it here. So in the next, I would say, week or so, we are going to be finalizing that options assessment, that final report. We're going to be looking to you all to take a look at that and then publishing it online, distributing it via news release, website, social media, all of those places. We are looking to engage with our typical survey partner yet this month. It's likely an email I'll send yet this week to say, hey, we want to start building out a survey based on that report. That's something that they'll do in beginning to middle of February. Then you all will have a chance to see that. We would look to send it out to the printer mid-February so that it lands in folks' mailboxes. Late February will be open for a couple of weeks so folks have an opportunity to take that survey, again, online or in paper, whichever they prefer and are comfortable with. Then we would present out survey results March 20th, provide you with those final results subsequently, make sure that we're sharing all of those results in all of the channels, and then we'll look to you all to determine what that path forward looks like. Any questions?
I think that was pretty much the exact same presentation that we saw once already.
Yep, very similar. Certainly, our process is that public education. We were asked to just make sure that we were able to provide an update now on kind of what those next steps looked like. I wanted to be sure that we were providing that kind of in the context of the full scope of what we've got going on.
So I guess the one question I have is, what will the council's involvement be in putting together the community survey?
I can take that one, Mia, if you'd like. So the internal work group for staff will continue to work with Miller and their survey consultant to develop the survey. And several days in advance of the survey going out, it will be shared with the council individually, or at least through the council email group, so you can at least take a look at that particular survey and offer any initial comment.
Do we have money in the 2024 budget to fund phase 3 if we go that direction?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Anybody? Gabriella?
I just want to say thanks. I am very clear about how this process works, which makes me happy to know that's how you educate people, because I feel very clear on what the next process is. So I hope that our residents will also feel very confident and clear about what the choices are in front of them. So thank you.
Chad, I presume you're... Oh, I heard a voice. Oh, okay. Chad, I presume you're going to send to us the PowerPoint you did tonight with the different options on it?
Yep, we will get that out to you. We'll probably end up packaging it with the Miller presentation as well. So maybe
so we can have those slides yet a third time?
Maybe a day or two, yeah. Yeah, and the assessment that's being completed by Miller as well.
Okay.
So that's, I think, about a 15 to 20 page document.
All right. I guess I'd really like to make sure that we can see the survey, more than a few days in advance of when it goes out, because I suspect there'll probably be a fair amount of input from the council as to what it should say.
Well, I think that we'll certainly do our best to make sure you have adequate time, but I also do want to caution that obviously we're working with professional consulting firms who specialize in the development of surveys, and obviously recognize the science behind how to phrase questions and those sorts of things. But of course, we'll certainly take the feedback and pass that along. But again, just want to level set expectations.
Excellent. Any other questions, comments? Dave, Joe, nothing? Okay. Well, I guess with that, thank you for giving us that update, and we will just be looking forward to the next steps.
We'll provide another update again in February.
So God, I love updates.
Pretty much every committee of the whole has the referendum conversation on it.
So that'll be at the February 28th meeting, which at that point the survey will already be in people's hands.
Ideally, yes.
Yeah, okay. All right. So thanks. We'll move to announcements, which is our next committee of the whole meeting is on February 28th. And I did want to just mention again that our March committee of the whole meeting is moving to March 20th instead of the 27th. So please mark your calendars for that. And with that, we get to item number 8.
I move to adjourn.
Motion's made and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Aye.